I'm delighted today to be talking to Dr. Faith Culshaw from Wantage, who's co-chair of the Wantage Cafe Scientifique. Good morning, Faith. Can you explain your role and who you organise this with and what this frankly is, this organisation?
Yes, well, I'm co-chair with John Van Dor, and between us we run Wantage Cafe Scientifique and have done so for the last couple of years, which works quite well. I think we complement each other because we come from different backgrounds ourselves, have different networks and different sort of areas of interest. Cafe Scientifique has a sort of ethos of making science accessible to a public audience, freely accessible as well, so there's no budget involved. The scientists give their time voluntarily, and we don't hand over any money for anything. The sort of slogan is science for the price of a coffee. So all Cafe Scientifiques tend to be run in cafes or places that provide refreshments, so we don't have to pay for the venue, because obviously people are supporting by buying, hopefully, refreshments. Obviously that's a bit different in the age of the pandemic, when we've all had to go online and getting our own refreshments, but that is the idea. So it's sort of, and it's actually international. There is a website which lists all the cafe size, and they do go all over the world. I noticed there was one in Beirut this morning. There's, Australia, everywhere actually, America and so on. But we have one in Wantage, and it's been going about 5 years now. And John and I took over running it a couple of years ago.
And was it the Beacon, is that right?
So yes, so it's at the Beacon, which is the old Civic Hall in Wantage, currently closed, unfortunately, but as is everywhere else really. And we use the cafe area of that, so it's quite interesting because we have to compete with things going on in rooms around us, including the Wantage belly dancers and the martial arts that goes on upstairs, so sometimes it's a bit distracting, the noises and things, but it works quite well in there. We're hoping to get a bigger screen if and when we go back there, because sometimes visibility isn't that good, and in fact some people have been saying they prefer it on Zoom and things, so and because car parking can be an issue as well, but it's a nice place to meet, and it's very central in Wantage, and we take our speakers to the local pub afterwards and I'll let them unwind there.
So it's a monthly, so basically it's a free talk on a different scientific topic each month, and it's on a Tuesday evening.
Yes, it's on the second Tuesday of every month. We have a break in August and December, but otherwise we try and get a speaker to talk once a month. And yes, we try and make this topics as diverse as possible, but obviously we're constrained by who we can get. But we do see science in its broadest sense, so not just the sort of physicists from Rutherford or whatever. We do try and get psychologists, medics, biologists, ecologists, physicists, chemists, and so on. So the whole lot. But
you've had everything from the psychology of advertising to space, astrophysics, haven't you? I mean, and
right, yes.
A fantastic spectrum.
Yes, I mean, obviously it depends. Sometimes people actually come to us and offer a talk. We had a very good talk actually from an astronomist who was actually just an amateur, but he was obviously very knowledgeable about the subject and did a great talk on the universe and had some wonderful pictures of stargazing and so on. But generally they are usually scientists who, ranging from PhD scientists. We had an excellent talk from someone who talked about fungi last year, Jenny Shelton. She was very good, and who's doing a PhD. But we also have some people who are retired, but obviously they still have to have some link in with science and perhaps still be working a bit, or very tied into the science area still.
And the whole point of it is to bring science into the community, to the lay people, and to kind of demystify some topics perhaps that people might read about and not understand in the news, or just think that it doesn't relevant to their lives. It must open the window on all sorts of topics for people, and presumably that's the point of it.
Yes, it is. I mean, I think demystifying myths is quite a good one, because you know, for instance, we've had Mike Landy, who's a climate change expert and spent most of his career in renewable energy and things, but he you know, did an excellent talk on climate change. I think everyone kind of accepts that climate change is reality now, but he did bring it home to us, the exact, you know, it puts it in very good lay language, what it is, why it's important, and what we can do about it, but at different levels as individual governments and so on. So yes, it's trying to, I mean, we don't have any agenda ourselves, but except to make science accessible to the public. So it's not as if we're promoting a particular, you know, aspect or anything, and we don't get people who just want to give an opinion. We want them to be scientists and talk about science, but in lay terms, so that people, yes, can understand it. We've also been lucky because, well, a friend of mine actually, Mike Skinner from Imperial, actually is a biologist and was being called on by the media quite a lot earlier in the pandemic to talk about COVID, and he came and gave an update to us last year, which again, I mean, it's a fast-moving thing, obviously, but he was able to give up-to-date information and yes, demystify some myths, but inform us about what was happening.
And you have a good audience, don't you? You have usually over 50 people listening each month.
We do. It's actually, yes, since we've been on Zoom, it's been between 50 and 60 on average, which, yeah, is great. We're pleased about that. Obviously, in some ways, it's a bit less interactive than doing it in the Beacon, but we always have a question and answer session time at the end, so people can ask questions. But yeah, I think it's adapted quite well to being online, and certainly the audiences have increased rather than decreased in number. So
yeah, I mean, especially in the winter, to travel, you know, to get your car when it's dark, to drive to Wantage, if you don't live in Wantage, might be a bit of a deterrent. So it's nice to be able to do it from the comfort of your own home. So
yes, it makes it.
What speakers have you got coming up for 2021? You've got one planned for is it next week? January?
Yes, so next week we've got one on using technology including satellites and the Internet of Things and things that a lot of us, including me, don't really understand, to monitor beehives, so honeybee management. And yeah, as I say, using the latest technologies. So that is by Paulette Elliott and Martine Barons, who I think are based at Rutherford, but certainly, yeah, working for the Science and Technology Research Council anyway, Science Technology Facilities Council.
Okay.
So they're coming, that's next week on the 12th of January. In February, we've got Sam Hatfield, talking about the quiet revolution of numerical weather prediction.
Blimey.
Yes. So that's
a great title.
Yes, yeah. And then in March, we've got Sally Powolowski, who's spoken before actually about autonomous vehicles, gave an excellent talk a year or so ago. She's going to talk about what makes a sustainable community. And she's going to talk about Oxfordshire's Living Laboratory, which is, I think, promoting different technologies, including transport, for sustainable communities. So that'll be interesting. And then we've just fixed up someone for April as well, which is Hugh Warwick, who people might have heard of, a hedgehog expert. So that'll be interesting to find out how we can protect hedgehogs.
Lovely. Yeah. So there's really something for all tastes. You do a really good job at diversity. Um, and yourself, your own background, you're a biologist originally?
Yes, I did applied biology many moons ago, and specialised in crop protection actually, and then did did a PhD, sorry, on pathogens of wheat, and then I worked for the Agricultural Advisory Service, sort of advising on crop diseases like oilseed rape and cereals. But yeah, so I didn't stay in academia really after doing my PhD. I wanted to get out into the world more, apply it. And I then worked at Harwell for a while on arable crops for energy, and then had a career break before moving to work for the research councils. And I've actually spent the last 15 years of my career working for the Natural Environment Research Council, trying to make links between scientists and policymakers, and forming partnerships, and yes, trying to get people to apply science, basically.
Well, it's such a challenge. I mean, this past year has shown more than anything that ignorance about science or different interpretations of science can cause so many problems on a government level, on a media level, on a social media level, just general public. I mean, besides Brexit, I've never known an issue that's divided people more, with, you know, coronavirus and
No.
should we wear masks or shouldn't we, and will a lockdown work?
Yes.
You know, and it's just and all the doctors, all the, you know, there just seems to be different cohorts of the medical establishment proposing completely different solutions, and it's really confusing. And I think generally in the media that there is a lack of well-trained scientific journalists, perhaps. I've heard this said, that really doesn't help, because you need someone to filter the information that's being pumped out and to interpret it for the public in a sensible way.
Yes, that's true. And I think people have to understand that science is a moving feast, that, you know, things are uncertain. Uncertainty is a big part of science, and you know, that's the aim of scientists, to try and answer questions and find more questions to answer. And you know, it's forever moving, and but yes, communication is a challenge, and we need people, you know, both scientists that are good communicators, but also people who can be the sort of people in between, and yes, journalists, and yeah, it's good for the public just to get basic understanding.
Well, it is, especially if you didn't get on with science at school. I mean, I like biology because I like drawing plants, and basically,
Yeah.
You know, but I struggled with physics, especially.
Me too. Yeah.
And you feel as an adult that there is a lot of the world that's shut off to me that I just cannot understand. You know.
Yeah.
How a radio works or something, and it's really sad, you know. So the more that people, you know, organizations like Cafe Scientifique can help to kind of raise people's confidence on topics that they didn't get on with at school, that would be great. On top of everything else you do, you were one of the founders of Sustainable Wantage. Is that correct?
Yes, I have been with Sustainable Wantage from the beginning, and in fact it's had various guises before that, which I was involved in to some extent. We were Wantage Area Climate Action and Green People and things like that. Anyway, it's sort of gone through various forms, but yeah, Sustainable Wantage is a really active environmental
really
group
good,
now. Yes, it's got great, I mean, I just volunteer for them, but the people who are well, we're all volunteers really, but the people who manage it, I have a deal of respect for, and they're very dynamic, and yeah, are doing a lot. And in fact, we have the mix in Wantage is a sort of facility that we're using at the moment to help reduce food waste by distributing it to those who might need it, but also those who just want to avoid wastage. So it is a very active group and moves with what the needs of the community are quite a lot, I think.
Definitely. I mean, the fear with the pandemic and with Brexit, it's just put climate change and environmental issues just further down the priority order in a lot of people's minds. But David Attenborough, bless him, is doing his amazing job.
Yes. And there are connections between all of it, but yes, obviously people's minds are focused on the pandemic. I mean, it's good that in some ways the environment would have benefited from the pandemic, but in other ways, you know, when you look at the amount of face masks and things disposed, or you know, all this sort of waste and plastic and so on, then it's you know, there are definitely some minuses as well.
I mean, single-use plastics have gone through the roof this year, I reckon.
I think they must
Gloves
have done.
and everything. Yeah. Can I just put you on the spot slightly with a question? If your background is with crop protection and presumably you were helping farmers protect their crops from diseases using chemicals, I'm guessing. And how do you square that with the kind of bigger eco needs of the planet? I mean, of course, farmers need to protect their crops, otherwise none of us can have anything to eat. But there must be some friction.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I don't think these things are black and white. I do think, I don't know if you, well, when I was looking at it, I mean, originally organic farming was, this is going back to the 80s when I did my PhD and things, and organic farming hadn't really taken off then actually, or not much. I think, but by the time I was working for the Agricultural Advisory Service, I was really interested in alternative methods of controlling diseases, pests and so on, and weeds. And part of my role was to compare different organic systems, or different farming systems, including organic and integrated, which actually is the, perhaps I think, more scientific approach of using chemicals only when absolutely needed, not prophylactically, not widespread, but and working more with the environment, but yeah, as I say, more judicious use of chemicals. And I think my mind is still that way inclined a bit, but I think it's really interesting how agriculture has developed, how organic farming has got much bigger. I mean, one of our speakers last year was Helen Browning from the Soil Association, who gave a very good talk on, you know, the importance of soil, of course, and protecting that. And I think that's, you know, we don't put enough into that. And I think things like rewilding projects are really interesting. But yeah, I also see it from the farmer's point of view, and some farmers who, you know, do rely on certain chemicals like Roundup, say, which isn't very persistent in the environment, and which does a job that, you know, it would take a lot of fuel in a tractor to do otherwise by going into the crop or hand labour or whatever. I think, you know, there are sort of as I say, I don't see it as black and white, and I don't have strong views at the moment. I think the organic farming movement is great, but I wouldn't say there was no place for any other sort of farming at the moment.
It's so important to remember things like black and white, like plastic. Plastic was brought in for a really good reason. Look at milk bottles. Look at the weight of a plastic milk bottle compared to the glass ones, and what that impact has on fuel costs. So you've got to look at the whole picture, haven't you?
Yes, and looking the whole way. And if you do it, you know, carbon footprinting is quite a good way, I think, if you're looking at the whole cycle of where energy or carbon is used. And sometimes perhaps the solution that might seem the worst on one level is actually
Yeah,
better
yeah.
in carbon terms.
Yeah. It's like,
Mm.
do you replace your fridge to get a more energy efficient one, but then
Yeah.
the whole carbon footprint of the new fridge being made compared to the life you've still got in your existing fridge, it's really, these decisions are really difficult to make.
Yes, they are difficult. I mean, there are things that are meant to help, sort of carbon calculators and I don't know, ethical consumer magazines and things like that. But yeah, making day-to-day decisions, it's often quite hard to know what the greenest solution is.
I sometimes go to the supermarket and I think, you get kind of frozen, kind of what choice do I make? What is the best choice to make? So we
Yeah,
can by ourselves
yeah.
nuts a bit about this. But
Mm.
just going back to Cafe Scientifique, what's the best way for people to get involved, to find out when the next speakers are coming up?
Well, anyone can sign up to get our newsletter, which is how you find out about it. There's yes, if you go onto the Cafe Scientifique national website, which I think is just cafescientifique.org, you can search for Wantage and find that, and you would then be able to sign up to receive the newsletter. We do have a Facebook page as well, so if you're on Facebook, you can look up Wantage Cafe Sci. If the talk happens to be environmentally focused, then I do put things in the Sustainable Wantage magazine as well. What else is there? Yeah,
you've got an email address.
Yes, you can do that, but I mean, I would just do the same thing, sign them up for the newsletter. So they might as well just go up on the site. But yes, if they want to.
Okay, so I've just found it. The website is cafescientifique.org.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and you just go to find a cafe, and I guess it's UK, obviously, and then you put in England. And
if you put Wanted in the search term, I think it gets you straight there.
Okay, lovely. And then there's a link to subscribe to the newsletter. Okay, but in general terms, it's the second Tuesday of the month, and the talks start at 7:30, and for the foreseeable future, they will be on Zoom.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Lovely. So, and this month's talk is on technology and beehives, how beekeepers are using technology to monitor or maximize their honey production. We'll find out.
Yes, I think I'm not sure at the stage of this research project that's being reported on, so it may be quite early on in things, but yes, it's apparently using Earth observation, remote sensing, and artificial intelligence. So it's using a range of technologies to monitor colonies and presumably colony health and so on, and bee activity, to make it easier to manage your beehives. But yeah, it'll be interesting to hear how far they've got and whether it's being put into practice at all yet. But
it sounds like a fantasy anyway. A good good fun for the beekeepers out there. Well, lovely. Thank you so much, Faith, for your time and for introducing us to the concept of Cafe Scientifique, and the fact that it's so, one of the benefits of Zoom, as you've said, is that it's so much more readily available, so anybody can sign in and tune in wherever they are, frankly, can't they? So
that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Lovely.
Do join us.
Thank you. Well, I look forward to seeing you on the screen again next week during that talk. Thank you.
Really good. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.